In these days of global disaster, all the money disappears with the fame. I'll say what I want, then burn my masters. And I suggest you do the same.
Hear my words, but don't breathe the air. You and I needn't speak to share. I'm so sick of the waiting now. I feel sick, so I'm laying down. Hear my words, but don't breathe the air. You and I needn't speak to share. I'm so sick of the waiting now. I feel sick, so I'm laying down.
Alright, I won't name names so he won't call legal. We'll call him Bitchute, and he killed Glass-Steagall. He's on the trail, off the rails, profits over people. But I won't call him a Nazi cause I haven't seen his eagle. But I have seen his equal, and he's seated in the White House. I've seen his equal, and she lost the fight twice now. I've seen the evil of a man who'll shake the hands of workers, knowing they've been slaving for a feeble wage and little purpose, all to keep afloat his bloated lifestyle. I'll keep us focused on our phones in the meanwhile. If I'm a broken record, this has been a time trial. But I will not go quietly into the future I'm supposed to hand to my child. I will not politely hold my tongue when I see voters in the web of suppression. So I'm about to burn the list of things we shouldn't mention. Alzheimer's causes bouts of both confusion and aggression. Sentences that fall apart in paper-thin patience. Well, I have not spent the past 4 years practicing critiques only to need them for the next administration. And part of me would love to vote for Trump to really stuff you Biden diatribe junkies who would tie us to a chair to watch him push out Bernie Sanders, say he needs to just accept the loss and have your little celebration. Well, I don't know about you, but I have too much love for this misguided nation. So I can't take another president who treats the world like he's a wealthy tourist and he's just too good to talk to all us Haitians. My only choice should not have to be trading one president who chews the Achilles heel of race relations, who plays up all our prejudices, fears, and darkest motivations, for one who hands us over to the corporations like we've all been sex trafficked. And I wish that was exaggeration. But it's part nightmare, part fascination. Mostly fascists saying we're a cushion generation, while they got the funding made to lift you out your station. While you miss your shift at your third job cause you can't afford your medication, cause the pain of your mobility is tied into the need to keep afloat and keep your family just this side of devastation. And here's the catch to immunization. You might get to have a say in what they give your baby, but in 20 years your baby better be prepared to pay right through the nose to be inoculated. So don't you be surprised when all your insulin is confiscated, cause someone found a buyer who's prepared to hike the price up even higher. And if you land in a coma, just as well, because you're out the conversation. You're not around to stage a demonstration. You're not around to protest human rights being eliminated. Not around to protest all these voters being silenced and intimidated. Maybe you can hear it in my intonation. One man's revolution is another's renovation. One hand better wash the other or it's amputated. God, I hate to be so black and white, but gray has led us straight into the mist and now the lamp is faded. And I don't think that we have very long before the night is falling quicker than anticipated. Quicker than the stocks crashed, quicker than your IRA was withered and emaciated. So why obey the men who solved the crisis that they orchestrated? Why are we so pleased to see a corpse get up and speak that we ignore the way the corpse debated? That he spoke in fragmented misinformation, that he tried to make an honest man's mistake out of a fabrication, and that all the major networks eat it up and tolerate it. So whose side are they on if they can point it out in Trump but act like they don't see it in the man they want to call our savior? Who keeps paying you to do such sick, dishonest labor? Oh shit, we do? No shit, me too? Everything you buy will find a way to own or eat you. Companies that feed you fund agendas to defeat you. Strip your wits away, rip your wick away, ultimately put you in a place to have to loot to feed your kid today and then detain and beat you. How is such an obvious process not see-through? At least not without a UV light. This year we'll purge our liberties with zero end in sight. So if you can't cast a vote that gives you hope about our plight, If you pick up the pen but in your heart it isn't right, think about the millions going hungry every night. Have the guts to write in Bernie. Have the guts to fight. Have the guts to fight.
Hear my words, but don't breathe the air. You and I needn't speak to share. I'm so sick of the waiting now. I feel sick, so I'm laying down. Hear my words, but don't breathe the air. You and I needn't speak to share. I'm so sick of the waiting now. I feel sick, so I'm laying down. Laying down.
Hear my words, there's no time to spare. We killed democracy, it's rotting in the square. And with its last breath, it cursed the very air. With the toxic miasma of class warfare, convulsions were brief. It seized for a minute, then it ceased to fidget. It was just deep sleep in a city-wide gibbet. A lot of sweet nothings like the rations we were given. A film crew followed them into the city limits to document the distribution. A little piece of human interest in the mass confusion. Some nice shots of a clean white van, neighbors helping neighbors with their clean white hands. Never mind the boxes being empty like the cans. Never mind a photo op that didn't feed a single man. And this is nothing you can blame on one single man or his supporting an immoral horde of sycophants. We set the stage, we wrote the play, we gave the man a script and highlighted every line he had to say. We're only in this boat because we chose to sail away. We didn't core out the decay, we let it spread. We watched the nation warp into the noxious dictatorship it is today. We made conditions perfect. It's almost like we want it this way. It's almost like we want it this way.
Hear my words, but don't breathe the air. You and I needn't speak to share. I'm so sick of the waiting now. I feel sick, so I'm laying down. Hear my words, but don't breathe the air. You and I needn't speak to share. I'm so sick of the waiting now. I feel sick, so I'm laying down. Laying down.
Who are these people?
Who are these people? Hi, everyone. What's up? It's Sunday night. It's Indy. It's this guy Reef over here. It's How Do We Miss That? And it's going to be our last show before we take a 1 week break at least. I don't know if it's going to be any further extended, but I'll be away next week, so we won't be here for a show next week. The week after that, we will be getting back the night before, so I don't know if we'll be taking 2 weeks off. We'll see, but we'll see. But there's so much happening. Holy crap. I had half the rundown for this show made like Wednesday because there's just ongoing crap stories happening. This is Indie News Network, by the way, in case you haven't heard. Check out INN, indienews.network, INNnewsletter.com. And also those Ko-fi links, Cash App links, if you're able to, and of means, and you like what you see here, hook us up with a couple bucks because we're totally user-funded. We don't take any ads, and we don't do any sponsorships. So we're going to talk about, and we're going to talk some shit tonight, let me tell you right now. We're going to talk some shit about Bitcoin, I think. I think we're going to have time to get to the Michael Saylor story. But that's a crazy story. We got an article that literally rips the cover off the Ponzi. And basically says the MicroStrategy is a big Ponzi scheme. We're also going to talk about what happened the other night with Trump tweeting out a war crime that they literally put Julian Assange in jail for tweeting a similar type of war crime in 2011. Yep. All right. We're going to talk about the tariffs. Everybody freak out. There's tariffs. Tariffs suck. Tariffs do suck. Tariffs are, we're kicking ourselves in the dick unnecessarily, repeatedly, in every country around the world simultaneously. Good job. And then, of course, we're going to have our normal weekly.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
Yes. Well, and then perfectly timed for that Palestinian piece of shit, and most of them are not, but he who refuses to even acknowledge the genocide of his own people that seems to be happening while he gets carried to the state, while he gets carried to the stage so his sneakers don't get dirty. Don't think I ever forgot about that. Don't think I ever forgot about that shit. All right. So Rafah, we got Netanyahu or somebody saying Gaza will not exist. Or it will be Israeli or it will not exist. Food prices, what's going on in Gaza there. The war on aid workers by the numbers. We brought a Steve Saylor piece. And then, of course, talking about Hussam Abu Safiya. It's now been more than 100 days since they captured him. Yep. And then I brought a Zay Squirrel article, and we're going to have some fun with that for the first shot tonight. Again, I put it up right before, but if you're able to, really appreciate any support that you can get. Cash App, $, Indie News Network, paypal.me/Indie News Network, co-fi.com/Indie News Network. And thank you, really. You guys have been so generous already this year, and it's helped. It's helped out a lot, and we're still going to do a lot more, but we're on our way to covering the expenses, and that really makes a big difference, I got to say. And Sean, the Accord Lord, okay, Kameshwari Kate, Natalie Williams, John H. There's so many people that are stepping up. Just this week, we added 3 new people to the list. We added Mvilla. Thank you so much, Margaret. Heather, who stepped up with a monthly subscription over on Substack, and then Lily dropped a really nice tip last week when Steve was on. So thank you to everybody. Just we're growing. Just the tip. No, it was a little more than just the tip. It was flattery. Wow. Wow. So we're gonna get into some funniness with Ezra Klein. No, it's more like with Zay Squirrel. All right. Oh, before we do that, let me just do this real quick and hide the bookmarks so that we get more screen and you don't have to see those bookmarks. So, back here. I read this article and I started to chuckle and I'm like, oh my God. Now,
you read?
This is the Zay Squirrel. I think a lot of people know who Zay Squirrel is. At Zay_Squirrel on Twitter. They're on Telegram. She's on Telegram. She's also has Discord. Very fiery about Israel. But wrote this article about Ezra Klein. And I was like, I remember Ezra Klein, that sweet, nerdy glasses guy. Well, he was a frequent guest on Rachel Maddow back in the shitlib days when a lot of us were shitlibs. All right. So
Can I go back to not knowing?
He was a frequent egg-headed guest who then was a co-founder of Vox. All right. When Vox launched, this was one of the guys that launched it. Thanks so much for foisting that neoliberal piece of shit on us. And then he, of course, found his natural home with the New York Times because shitlibs of a feather flock together. So, He recently did a podcast with Ta-Nehisi Coates. So in his interview, Ezra Klein repeatedly, over and over again, launders the ongoing genocide by blaming Palestinians for it. Naturally, he's a Zionist. He does this through the term agency, his favorite liberal and pseudo-intellectual buzzword used to justify all their genocidal mania. Like I said, we're going to have some fun. We're going to air this one out. This is the magic of agency. It turns everything into whatever you want while pretending you're making an objective, fair, and reasonable analytical point. Welcome to Democratic, talking speak in 101. It allows you to posture as intellectually honest and serious. That's who Ezra Klein is. He's the paragon of moral virtue, the quintessential New York Times liberal. He determines what's just and unjust for the world today and throughout history. The Ezra Kleins embody virtue. They love to virtue signal. So, are Palestinians being subjected to genocide by Ezra Kleins? Well, that in their moral framework is virtue. That is moral necessity. That is the height of morality itself. Because why? Because agency. a pseudo-intellectual concept I've thoroughly dismantled before. Hamas did it. It's all because of Hamas and the Palestinian resistance. And if it weren't for them and their agency, there wouldn't be a genocide right now. And you couldn't possibly deny agency, so you should all agree that the genocide is actually moral and good and civilized, right? Here's the problem, Ezra. Jews had agency under Nazi Germany, by that definition. You can't deny that. In fact, they had more agency in Weimar Germany leading up to Nazi rule than Palestinians have ever had under Israeli genocidal apartheid. There were Jewish ministers in government, like Rudolf Hilferding. Jews were leading political figures in major political parties, like the Social Democrats, which were governing parties. The Weimar Constitution itself was drafted by Jewish lawyer Hugo Preuss. Leading scientists and scholars at the top German universities included Jews like Einstein, I've heard of him, and Husserl, right? There was a ton of agency here, right, Ezra? And yet Hitler rose to power. The Nazis took control and instituted anti-Semitic policies that eventually led to the Holocaust. So, by your logic then, the logic you apply to Palestinians who dare resist their genocide, their occupation, their apartheid, you ascribe such great power to agency that you make it the casual element behind their destruction. By that standard then, and this might get me in trouble some places, Jews in Nazi Germany caused their own genocide. Jews in Weimar had significant agency. There were Jews in the Soviet Union, right? There were Jews in the Soviet Union in top positions with agency, right? Jews in the U.S. had agency, and by your framework, that agency must have casually influenced the rise of the Nazi movement and the broader views of the German public. You can't deny all that. You can't deny all that agency. That's a part of reality, right, Ezra? I said we're going to air this one out. And this is very tongue-in-cheek, but surely it must have played a role in shaping Nazi ideology, just as you claim Palestinian resistance is responsible for Israeli genocide. The Nazis had a significant portion of the German public believed that Jews wielded their agency in nefarious ways. This mirrors the Israeli Zionist perspective, which holds that Palestinians are subhuman and that their mere resistance justifies extermination, on top of the fact that they accuse them of lying about all of the atrocities that are being committed against them. Yet Ezra refuses to analyze these claims historically. In fact, he explicitly told Ta-Nehisi Coates that we shouldn't, that we must engage only with feelings and lived experiences, which are raw and impervious to real history and facts and objective reality. Now feelings are more important than facts. It's very interesting. We must accept the genocidal Zionist Israeli perspective as the universal reality, because agency, that is the Israeli agency, which we are also not allowed to deny. So why do you not extend that logic to the Nazis and to their lived experiences with Jews? The Nazis also had agency. This is the hard, again, I can't even say, as a Jewish guy, it hurts to even say this, but it's so embarrassing that Ezra would position himself that he would be criticized like this. It's got to be done. The German public that supported the Nazi movement had agency. They had lived experiences, which, by your own logic, should be considered separate from historical analysis and objective reality, just as you insist we do for Israel's genocide. I mean, my head is hurting here.
Is it?
A little bit. So let's set aside history for a moment, as you demand we do for your precious Israeli death and rape cult. Allegedly, but not allegedly. Let's apply your own logic to Nazi Germany, which murdered your people, Ezra. And when we do, we must conclude by necessity, as dictated by our acceptance of agency, that the Jews were responsible for their own genocide, much more so than Palestinians could be, given their comparatively lower level of agency leading up to and after the Nakba. Anyone who says this is a moral monster. They're a Nazi. This is literally what Nazis say, except they didn't have the pseudo-intellectual, incoherent term agency to launder it. How convenient. Do you see what this liberal Zionist moral universe actually consists of when you apply it universally rather than just to their precious genocidal Israel death and rape cult? When you turn it back on them? It's literal Nazism. It's pure, unfiltered Nazism. I don't even know what that means, but okay, squirrel. And yes, it is true. Ezra Klein, the good liberal at the New York Times, along with Noah Smith, Matthew Iglesias, Jeffrey Goldberg, all these good liberal Zionists are modern-day Nazis. And they rule over the U.S., NATO, Israeli empire, the Fourth Reich. That is the reality of our situation. At least from the squirrel's perspective, which I agree with, by the way. To be clear, everything Ezra Klein says in that interview is a brazen, shameless lie. He paints the Palestinian resistance, including Hamas, as a rabid, irrational, subhuman beast purely out for death and destruction. He inverts reality to launder Zionism, as detailed in this thread, which includes a detailed overview by Coulter Lurwers of the many times Hamas has offered a diplomatic resolution by including laying down their arms, which has been repeatedly refused by Israel.
In recent weeks, the Joe Biden administration has claimed that once the current crisis in Gaza is over, it's going to revive, quote unquote, concerted efforts at establishing a two-state resolution to the Israel-Palestine conflict. It's been all the more vehement, however, that there is no place for Hamas in this two-state settlement.
Can't even say it right.
You know the argument. Hamas is committed to destroying the state of Israel. Therefore, Hamas itself must be destroyed. Therefore, the genocide in Gaza must continue if we ever want to see any peace in the region. Claims like this, blaming the Palestinian leadership for the Israel-Palestine conflict's infamous intractability, are of course not new. Decades ago, the Israeli foreign minister, Abba Eban, claimed that, quote, the Palestinian leadership has never missed an opportunity to miss an opportunity for peace. Now, as my chapter in Deluge attempts to demonstrate, the main problem with this claim is that it's completely contradicted by the factual record. In reality, both the Palestine Liberation Organization, the PLO, and then after it, Hamas, have, with varying degrees of clarity, endorsed a two-state resolution to the conflict, whereas Israel, of course backed unilaterally by the United States, has persistently rejected such a resolution in favor of territorial expansion, and has in fact resorted often to very bloody military assaults in order to derail the threat of Palestinian peace offensives. If you take the PLO, in the aftermath of the June 1967 war, the PLO initially rejected recognition of Israel for perfectly understandable reasons. They did not want to accept a state that had been established on 78% of historic Palestine via the dispossession and displacement of the indigenous Palestinian people. And yet, from the early 1970s, particularly after the October 1973 war, Yasser Arafat and the core Palestinian leadership recognized that legitimizing Palestinian claims in the eyes of the international community would necessitate the pragmatic step of recognizing Israel. And already in January of 1976, the PLO offered to do just that at the United Nations Security Council. Predictably, the United States reacted by vetoing the resolution. Israel, for its part, refused to take part in the Security Council deliberations and carried out airstrikes in Lebanon against Palestinian refugees, killing dozens.
Like you
and
do.
As this pattern of Israeli behavior became more and more manifest in the late 1970s, American officials came to observe that Israeli strikes in South Lebanon had very little to do with the supposed threat of Palestinian terror, and in fact everything to do with attempting to batter the Palestinians out of their moderation and back into extremism. The apex of this strategy was, of course, the June 1982 Israeli invasion of Lebanon, in which, for fear of the fact that the Palestine Liberation Organization had accepted a ceasefire and scrupulously adhered to it for over a year, and
they attacked the army barracks.
Was advocating negotiations once again. Israel steamrolled
In the
into
airports.
Lebanon, killing 15,000 to 20,000 Palestinians and Lebanese.
I love how he just glosses over that.
25 years.
Wait a minute.
And Israel
just killed 15 to 20,000 Lebanese. Like, it's just accepted.
Yep.
And
today, or not today, but in 2006 and after, carried out the exact same plague book in relation to its to the threat of Hamas peace offensives. Elected in January 2006 on a reform platform, Hamas very quickly signaled to Washington that it was willing to abandon its notorious 1988 charter and to integrate itself into negotiations aimed at a two-state settlement. The crucial point is this: in the 15 years since, neither Washington or Tel Aviv has ever once so much as indicated that it would be willing to test that Hamas offer. To the contrary, they immediately moved to punish the Hamas leadership and the people of Gaza through that vile and illegal blockade. When Hamas threatened to break with its assigned role as a rejectionist terrorist group and sought to integrate itself into negotiations, Israel furthermore fell back upon its age-old method, massive resort to military violence. And as Norman has documented in insane detail, it carried out military operations in 2006, in 2008, in 2012, and 2014, in virtually every case, aimed, at least in part, at derailing Palestinian peace initiatives. And so, when the question is raised, how can Israel coexist with Hamas when it refuses to engage in diplomatic activity or refuses to recognize Israel? The simple answer is that Hamas tried. It tried that for 15 years. And every avenue it sought to go down, it was blocked by American and Israeli power. And as I write in the chapter, the bottom line is this, that were it not for the fact that Israel not only missed, but actively spurned and sabotaged every Palestinian peace offer. Those crimes committed on October 7th and the much greater crime that is ongoing, that Israeli genocide in Gaza, would never have happened. They would never have happened because the Israel-Palestine conflict would have long been resolved.
damn. Damn. That was impressive. Damn! That's Coulter lore worse, okay? Lower worse. So the same offer was again made last year and was once again dismissed by everyone, including genocidal Zionists like Ezra Klein. What a surprise. Again,
Of course.
Hamas willing to lay down its arms. This is the Associated Press almost a year ago, last April. Top Hamas political official told the AP they are willing to agree to a truce of 5 years or more that would lay down its weapons and convert it into a political party if an independent Palestinian state is established along pre-67 borders, which Israel will never allow. The Ezra Kleins of the world will ignore all this and instead hysterically shout, "How dare they resist my Zionist genocide and occupation? How dare they respond to decades of Zionists like me, mass raping, maiming, and killing their babies, children, women, and men by retaliating in kind?" And to such a marginal, right, to such marginal extent that when you compare casualty figures to our mass killing sprees, their response is barely visible. No, that's not how it works. We kill, we rape, we maim. We throw your babies into ovens and then fabricate hoaxes to launder our crimes, making it part of our wedding rituals to take photos of these babies and stab them with knives. Oh, God. I don't know. I'm going to regret this. The baby who was burned alive is now part of depraved Israeli marriage rituals where they take photos of him
Yes.
and stab it as a symbol for all
Yep.
Palestinian babies they want to burn and kill. Oh my God.
Nope.
Wow.
Bruh.
Yeah, brah is right. All right. That threat only gets worse, by the way. That's what we, Ezra Klein's, Matthew Iglesias's, and Noah Smith's do to you. And you dare respond? You dare think you are human and allowed to even consider resisting as we occupy, genocide, and rape you to death? Now, Ezra Klein is not doing that. However, Ezra Klein is full-throated supporting the people who are, which is just as bad, if not worse, because he doesn't have the balls to do it himself. He's relying on them to do it and then turning around and trying to justify their animalistic behavior. No, that's not how the Zionist Nazi universe works. They are human, you are subhuman. At one point, Ezra Klein claims that Hamas is worse than Netanyahu. You can only say this if you are a Zionist ethnic supremacist who believes Palestinians, Lebanese, and Yemenis are subhuman. Hundreds of thousands maimed, burned alive, tortured, and raped to death. They're all nothing to Ezra Klein compared to the Palestinian resistance daring to resist occupation, genocide, and apartheid, which they're legally allowed to do. Remember, we got the shirt. When people are occupied, resistance is justified. We got a t-shirt and a sticker. Go get it. IndieNews.shop. At another point, Ezra Klein, at another point, Ezra asserts that Hamas knew what Operation Al-Aqsa Flood would cause, namely the mass murder and rape of their people, because everyone supposedly knows how genocidal and depraved the Ezra Kleins of the world are, or at least the Ben-Gvirs, the Gallants, and the Netanyahus. And by proxy, Ezra Klein. See, he uses them as a proxy. He denounces them. They're the bad ones. But they're not really the bad ones because he's completely fine with what they're doing. Or at least they should know, solely when it benefits the Hasbara propaganda line that launders genocide by blaming it on Hamas and their so-called agency, a variation of the classic and depraved human shields trope. But by that logic, Ezra Klein and Zionists should have known that their occupation, occupied, and genocide of Palestinians for a century would lead to Operation Al-Aqsa Flood. Ergo, they are morally absolved completely.
Ergo Proctor Hawk?
Basically, post-Proctor Hawk. Especially since every Israeli is actually, by definition, a human shield. But again, Ezra Klein can't even comprehend applying this as a universal standard because he is a Zionist. And as Squirrel says, he's a Zionist Nazi. He believes he and his people, and by his people, he solely means Zionist Jews. He doesn't. He also means Zionist Christians, are superior to all other forms of life on this planet, and that they maim, rape, and kill are subhuman. I don't think he really truly believes that. Squirrel is accusing him of that. These are the genocidal Zionist liberal scum who run the liberal New York Times, CNN, AP, Reuters, Guardian, and Washington Post. Finally, another genocide laundering lie Ezra Klein constantly repeats is this myth of a good, virtuous, liberal left Israel with sincere peace seekers who were thwarted by the evil of Hamas and Palestinian resistance in the 90s, forcing them to become genocidal. Hamas didn't even exist until 2006, but that's a whole other thing. This is yet another brazen, shameless lie the genocidal Zionists like Ezra Klein have fabricated and spread to launder their own sadistic, pathological bloodlust and project it onto those they occupy, rape, and murder. Sick. Israel has been a death cult that has resolutely opposed any peace deal in favor of continuing its occupation, apartheid, and genocide, as detailed by Norman Finkelstein and Mika's dad, Mr. Berzinski, of all people. All right? Oh, with Mika and Morning Joe, which I'm not going to play because fuck them. but I will play the Finkelstein piece because I think this is important, even though fuck democracy now.
Israel was the only country in the world, the only one, which had legalized torture from 1987 to 1999. The record on torture, on house demolitions, and targeted.
1999 is when we came to office.
I wish that were. I wish that were the saving grace. But the fact of the matter is, being faithful to the historical record, the record of labor has been much worse on human rights violations than the record of Likud. It's a fact that the only Israeli government during the period from 1967 to the present which temporarily suspended torture was Begin from 1979 to 1981. On the record of house demolitions, Mr. Rabin used to boast that he demolished many more homes than any Likud government. Even on the record of settlements, as Dr. Ben-Ami well knows, the record of Rabin was worse in terms of settlement expansion than the record of Yitzhak Shamir. And a fact he leaves out in the book, the record of Barak on housing startups in the occupied territories.
Building more houses.
Yeah, was worse than the record of Netanyahu. It's a paradox for, I'm sure, American listeners, but the record on human rights, an abysmal record in general, and in particular, the worst record is the record of labor, not Likud.
Which is also really interesting. And Norman's a legend. Again, we talked about Norman when he had the Beitar terrorist pager attack happen to him a few weeks ago. Don't always agree with him, but he has been really good basically since October 8th, 2023. He's been a leader. He's been an outspoken voice. And, you know, he had a lot of questionable takes on COVID and other stuff, but he's been 100% spot on here. I didn't like when he said that Rafah, and I remember a while back, he said Gaza is completely gone. I disagree with that, at least now. I sure as hell hope that isn't going to be the case. And we're still fighting to make that not a reality. We're definitely losing it, and we'll go into a little bit more detail on that in a minute. But, you know, shitting on Ezra Klein is certainly not going to help YouTube. Maybe they'll like that because it's some kind of conflict. I don't know. Thank you to everyone who's here. But if you're able to, because we are demonetized on INN, we ask you to not give money to the platforms anyway. We'd rather not have to pay the fees. So Cash App, $ Indie News Network, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, paypal.me/Indie News Network are the best ways to support the channel. And you can also subscribe monthly or annually or even free at INNnewsletter.com, where 6 to 7 days a week, you'll get a daily update of all of the live streams, the clips that are published, the articles, any simulcasts, and then a weekly update on Friday night. There are podcasts. I've now started making Boats Smashing Into Other Boats, a podcast that will be published on Thursdays. Our one-on-ones are being published over there. So there's a lot to subscribe to over at INNnewsletter.com. Please do that. Again,
Coming to a Substack newsletter near you.
I'd rather you did that actually for free, and then support us over at Ko-fi and PayPal and Cash App. Those are the best ways to do that. That's been the formula, and it works great for us and for you. And thank you so much to all who do it. And if you do have to super chat, by the way, my channel, youtube.com/INDLeftNews is also, we're co-streaming there. You can go and leave a super chat over there. That channel is actually monetized. Nobody does. It's fine. I'm completely fine with you doing it. Don't. But if you have to, and you're hooked up and you don't have the other ones and you feel like you got to do that, okay, fine. Or you can subscribe over at Rumble. Do too. But you can subscribe over at Rumble too. Rumble.com/C/Indie News Network. A monthly subscription there. We get 100% of those proceeds, and that's sent over to PayPal. And you can gift subscriptions. It's $5 a month. And it gives you like a nice little highlight whenever you chat over there. I'm a monthly subscriber to AM Wake Up because I watch the show a lot and TLAV, and I like seeing that thing and supporting them with them getting 100% of the fees. All right, so here we go. It's time for Fuck Israel this week. You know, we need like a little song or a little song and dance, and IDF soldiers wearing diapers or something, and Netanyahu being pissed on, or we've got to come up with something, but we need something for this Fuck Israel segment. But we're going to start out with a guy. I don't know if you know who this guy is. I've heard of him. I know you've brought a couple of his articles to INN News in the past.
Who are these people?
Hey, look at that. That's I know that sound. That's a fun sound. Thank you, everybody.
That's from Fred Edward.
Hey, Fred.
Fuck Israel, free Palestine.
Well, that's a
Appreciate
good
you,
mess.
dog.
Thank you, Fred. All right, where's the other? Here we go. There's your message. Thank you, sir. All right, so Jason Hickel, he's a professor, college professor, wrote an article that I thought was also really interesting, reminding people that no, Israel is not a democracy. The only democracy in the Middle East is not a democracy. More than 11 million people are denied the right to vote for the government that controls their territory. So how can you call that a democracy exactly? Okay. He starts off by saying that U.S. politicians like to say that Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East, but it's not. Not by a long shot. In fact, it functions as one of the most undemocratic countries in the world. Israel exercises total control over the West Bank and Gaza. These territories have no actual sovereignty. The West Bank, with 3 million people, is subjected to military occupation, which is illegal under international law, let's not forget. And as for Gaza, which had 2.1 million people, now we think it's down to as many as 1.5 maybe, is also under military occupation, according to international law, as Israel maintains direct control over its airspace, its coast, and its land borders, controlling everything that goes in and out. How is that not an occupation? They'll deny that they occupy them. The 5.1 million people living in these territories do not have the right to vote over the government that determines virtually everything about their lives. And their basic human rights under international law are unenforced and regularly violated with impunity. On top of this, there are another 6 million Palestinians who've been forcibly removed from Palestine and who exist as stateless refugees with no rights within their homeland whatsoever. So what's going on here? Well, apartheid. Many people get hung up on the apartheid analogy because when they think of apartheid in South Africa, they think of segregation and unequal rights among citizens, and they say this sort of thing doesn't happen in Israel. It does. But this is known as petty apartheid, and it was only a minor part of the apartheid system in South Africa. The real action, grand apartheid, had much bigger designs, and this is where the analogy is strongest. Grand apartheid was the process of reshaping territorial boundaries and citizenship. The idea was to forcibly remove the African population from the majority of the country's territory, literally bulldozing their houses and loading them into trucks, does it sound familiar, and dump them onto tiny fragmented chunks of land called Bantustans. Now, then you put a border around each Bantustan, give people citizenship there, give it a flag and a coat of arms, and set up a parliament. Taking this approach, ethnic cleansing, the apartheid regime shoved most of the African population into enclaves comprising just 13% of the land and denied them any rights of citizenship within the white territory. Now you could consider to replace white with Jewish. White people justified this by saying Africans had rights in their own countries, the Bantustans. But of course, the Bantustans were fake. They had no real power, no economic sovereignty, no independent militaries, etc. The apartheid regime controlled their borders and trade. Israel was established in 1948, the very same year the apartheid regime was established in South Africa. and has followed the grand apartheid playbook chapter and verse. The Nakba began the process of shoving Palestinians off their land, out of their homes, and either into the enclaves that today form Gaza and the West Bank. Those are the stands where 5.1 million people live within borders Israel controls, or into neighboring countries like Jordan and Egypt and Lebanon and Syria, where 6 million Palestinians live as stateless refugees. The process of ethnic cleansing continues today. And of course, what's the result? More than 11 million people, again, that's just Palestinians, are hived off from the realm of rights within their own territory and deny the right to vote for the government that controls it. Minority rule by Zionists is declared by democratic. They declare it democratic only because it excludes the majority of the population. Calling this democracy is an extraordinary farce. There's no democracy within apartheid. Apartheid must be abolished. The 11 million must be free to return to their land and homes. Their homes don't exist anymore, but at least their land, and must enjoy full rights of citizenship within a fully democratic polity, including the right to vote for the people who govern them. That's a democracy. It also bears noting that while the U.S. liberal discourse implies that they want to see democracy in the Middle East, nothing could be further from the truth. For the past 60 years, the U.S. has propped up authoritarian regimes in the region in order to maintain its interests, has sought to crush liberation movements for struggling for democracy. As Samir Amin pointed out, the U.S. and Israel actively reject genuine democracies in the region because democratic Arab countries would quickly tip the balance of power in favor of the Palestinian cause. Hey, how about that? That's amazing. The claim that Israel is an apartheid state is not a fringe opinion. Every major human rights organization has taken this position, from Amnesty International to Human Rights Watch, which both also have their own issues. And in 2024, the ICJ issued an opinion stating that Israel is in violation of Article 3 of CERD, which condemns and prohibits racial segregation and apartheid. Israel is an apartheid regime. Apartheid is recognized as a crime against humanity in the Rome Statute of the ICC, and it must be abolished. But Israel runs the world, so apparently that's not going to happen right now, maybe, but I don't know why we shouldn't be fighting for it. And I think some of us and a lot of us are marching in the streets of New York City and saying, don't cancel NATO is not necessarily the way to do it. Right?
Hands off NATO! Hands off!
Well, wait, hands off Medicare. Yes. Hands off all the things we will never fight for. That's what the Democrats are saying. Right?
Yeah.
Now this one.
Taking ketamine? Because I think it could really help you.
Thank you, Shelly. Shelly.
What?
Left Voice is another Indie Media Award honoree. And Otto Force is one of my more favorite writers over there. He and Wolfgang Mendelbaum wrote an article that quotes Netanyahu.
Wolfgang Mendelbaum.
That quotes Netanyahu.
Names are funny.
And this is why I brought this. It was really just for the headline. We'll read the article, but it was really just for the headline that Netanyahu said that Gaza will be Israeli or it will not cease. It will not exist. He continues his plan to annex Gaza. Again, with
how about new?
Yeah, except that this is why Miriam.
Crazy Dutch bastard.
No, he's an Israeli bastard with Polish background, but
close enough.
This is
close
what
enough to Dutch.
This is what Miriam Adelson paid for to get Donald Trump as president, and the deal that Donald Trump made was to allow them to completely annex Gaza and the West Bank. So Netanyahu is making plans to annex Gaza, supported by a new circle of ministers, monsters, and advisors, even more extreme than the previous ones, determined to wage war until Hamas and the enclave itself are completely eliminated, except that We've seen the military assessments that say that you will never get rid of Hamas. Never. Because what will happen is the rest of the world you can't eliminate Hamas everywhere else around the world. You can't bomb every hotel that somebody that might be Palestinian and supporting that cause. Or maybe they will, but I don't think they can.
Ugh.
You could outlaw religion and most of these sex crimes would disappear in a couple of generations. But we don't have time for rational solutions.
Church of Carlin, it's Sunday. It's Sunday, folks. We got to go to church. So, Otto
speaking
and
of sex
Volka,
crimes in Israel, who showed up there?
Right?
Who showed up recently?
Rusty Rockets, baby. He's got those Rusty Rockets.
Andrew Tate, soon to follow.
Rape charges and Israeli trips go together like peanut butter and jelly.
Go together. You got sex crimes in my Israel. You got Israel in my sex crime.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, fucking what a disgusting world we live in.
1 week after the resumption of the genocide in Gaza, the death toll is catastrophic. Nearly 800 dead, including a large number of children. I saw another headless one them running down the street today, blurred out.
Yeah, I know, dude. Fucking just awful.
And they'll deny all this. Yep. Access to humanitarian aid has been completely cut off for more than 3 weeks. The IOF are bombing hospitals and homes and civilian infrastructure. On Monday, Israel announced that it had attacked more than 100 pickup trucks under the pretext that they could be used by the Al-Qassam brigades. With the resumption of negotiations stalled and the imperialist powers continuing to openly support Israel's massacres in the enclave, the future looks bleaker than ever for Gazans. The new Army Chief of Staff, Eyal Zamir, remember that name? He's the new Gallant. He said that he wants to complete what Israel has been trying to do since October 2023, eliminate any Hamas presence in Gaza. This means an escalation of indiscriminate bombing and the systemic destruction of civilian infrastructure, whatever is left. But above all, this goal is now compounded by the threat of an unprecedented military deployment. An unprecedented military deployment because there's so much there for them to worry about. According to the Wall Street Journal, plans for a massive ground invasion have been drawn up and could be implemented very quickly. The army has already regained control of the Netzarim corridor and is conducting incursions into Gaza City and the northern Gaza Strip in an effort to expand its buffer zone. That's a nice way to say its murder zone. It's also present in Rafah, Khan Yunis, as well as the Tel Asutran refugee camp, which is surrounded by the IOF after a massive bombardment that left more than 50 dead. And this week we saw bombings in Rafah and Khan Yunis. The goal is to smother Hamas, quote unquote, by occupying large swaths of territory and maintaining a significant military presence there, leaving it nowhere to retreat, choking it off everywhere they can. In earlier phases of the quote-unquote war, you mean the massacre, the army typically withdrew after capturing an area, giving Hamas the ability to reestablish itself. This time, the goal is to gradually reduce any room for maneuver, eliminating each pocket of resistance piecemeal. This would be accompanied by a gradual and systemic destruction of Hamas's entire tunnel network. Secret tunnels that a lot of which Israel built.
Shit.
By the way, I noticed they didn't mention that.
Secret tunnel.
This exclusively military strategy risks being rejected by the Israeli opposition and a large segment of public opinion, which would initially prefer a political solution, that is, the resumption of negotiations to secure the release of the remaining hostages and a ceasefire, even if it means resuming the war to settle the Palestinian problem. Wow, that sounds a lot like what they used to call the...
That sounds like a final solution.
A J problem, right?
The Palestinian problem. that requires a fucking
Modern problems require modern solutions.
But the new war council,
final ones apparently,
centered around Israel Katz. That's another one of the names you need to know. I believe he replaced Ben Gvir, and A.L. Zamir is taking a much more radical line than the previous one, which already was extremist.
Pretty fucking radical, right?
According to them, the quote-unquote defeat of Hezbollah, the fall of the Assad regime, and the fact that the Houthis are facing incessant U.S. bombing now gives them, thanks U.S., now gives them free hand to achieve what they want, what they have so far failed to accomplish, the total elimination of Hamas, which, of course, the U.S. intelligence community has said they'll never be able to do. Along the same lines, the IDF has intensified its strategy of targeting senior Hamas political staff. Now, it's funny how they haven't even mentioned a civilian death in all this. This is just about their intention.
Just say
about
seniors.
Right? Right.
You know?
Since the resumption of the genocide.
Citizens, that's who they plan on targeting.
Several central figures in the Gaza government have already been eliminated, including the enclave's prime minister, Hussam al-Dalish, as well as his presumed successor, Ismail Barhoum, also killed with a justice minister, the interior minister, the finance minister, and the head of Hamas's security agency, Sinwar.
Yeah, we killed him, but trust us, this guy was horrid.
Right. So, but they should negotiate. They've killed all the people they negotiate with. Anyone who comes to negotiate ends up dead.
And pray I don't alter the deal further.
Right. But beyond the cabinet rhetoric, the plan, as Haaretz reported Friday, aims for the total occupation of Gaza, accompanied by the establishment of an Israeli military administration modeled on the one in force between 67 and 94. One of its central missions would be to organize the expulsion of the entire Gazan population in accordance with the ethnic cleansing plan promoted by Donald Trump. Yes, promoted by Donald Trump. Initially, Gaza's 2 million inhabitants would be confined to a small humanitarian quote-unquote zone, which of course they continuously bomb. Yes. Where food aid would never exceed the minimum calories necessary for their survival. That's called a starvation plus diet, and Israel's had Palestinians on that for the past 2 decades already. The aim, Israel's full annexation of Gaza. As L'Orient de Le Jour summarizes,
Nazis. I hate these guys.
Before Israel Katz, no Israeli official had gone so far with regard to Gaza. There were threats to destroy it, depopulate it, occupy it, which was done, but never to annex it. The taboo has fallen. Gaza will be Israeli or it will not exist. However, before he can carry out his project, Netanyahu will have to deal with a series of contradictions. Israel's mired in an unprecedented internal crisis, compounded by a major political crisis. 73% of Israelis want the prime minister to resign, a figure that has increased since his attempt to remove the Shin Bet chief. Meanwhile, a mutiny of reservists is underway. Exhausted by the war, many now refuse to continue living the horrors of Gaza. 18 months of genocide, just too much for them. The project of totally eradicating Gaza is possible thanks to the unconditional support Netanyahu enjoys, first from the Biden and then the Trump administrations, but also from the European powers, which support and shamelessly participate in the genocide, especially the spy flights that Keir Starmer has been promoting and providing, likely free of charge.
Yep, accurate.
The cynical refrain, repeated ad nauseum, of, quote, Israel's right to defend itself, unquote, finds its logical conclusion here, the realization of genocide and annexation. And this was originally published at the end of March in La Izquierda Diario, which is the Argentinian version, the Left Diary. That's what La Izquierda Diario stands for. Left Voice, again.
You better say Free Palestine.
That's right. Indie Media Award honoree, Free Palestine, you bet. I will say it. This speaks for itself. Targets.
Ugh. Yep.
Had to bring that. I saw it and I'm like, oh, Red Crescent, press, babies, mothers, grandmothers.
Mothers. Yeah.
Targets.
Free Palestine.
And we get to Rafah, which is now completely laid to waste. Rafah in southern Gaza before and after U.S.-made bombs paid by American taxpayers and non-taxpayers, paid by American citizens and non, were dropped by Zionist terrorists on Palestinian natives. You are all complicit in this genocide. We all are.
Are we the baddies?
Yep.
That's the same main road.
I remember when Rafah was a red line. I remember that.
That's the same main road.
Yep. It's fucking crazy.
Fuck Joe Biden. Fuck Blinken. Fuck Sullivan. Fuck all these people that did this. Kamala Harris. And of course, Netanyahu and all the Israeli genocidal fucking maniacs. That still, this isn't even enough for them. They want more. They're going to escalate the attack even more. Because this isn't enough. These fucking lunatics, monsters.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You know, we talked about the Red Crescent workers and the horrifying story that happened to them. 15 of them murdered by Israel after going and trying to recover, and then Israel shooting at the people trying to recover their bodies, that they had buried the rescue trucks. And now we have cell phone footage from one of the aid workers as they're being fired upon. 45
Lights
seconds.
on the entire time.
This is horrific. I'm sorry to do
Clearly
this.
marked. Ambulance insignia.
Hey, مرمي.
They're lying around scattered. They're everywhere.
There's no God but God.
Gunshots are heard for a full 5 minutes on the video.
Correct.
Saeed Mohammed Morandi.
But they said they were acting suspiciously, these ambulances. Then they rescinded that, said they made a mistake. Oopsies.
Just another Israeli lie that they won't be held accountable for. Just another Monday.
No.
And then we have Abu Bakr.
You can't handle the truth.
Israel has bombed the gate of Al-Aqsa Hospital. I don't even know what that looks like at this point because they've already bombed it how many times?
Yeah. It's tense.
Killing 2 people and wounding others. The 2 are my cousin and his child.
Alhamdulillah.
These motherfuckers.
Well,
This is a 21-year-old kid. This is a 22-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Having to deal
and then
with...
they bombed the journalist tent.
Yep.
I had to watch a man burned
Burning.
alive today. Again.
Now, I also wanted to mention Abu Bakr, posted the other day about food prices. If they're even available per kilogram, $7 for tomatoes. We're not even paying $7.
Yep.
$8 eggplant, $90 a kilogram for meat or fish.
$30 a liter for oil is what the Intifada article had this week.
$11 a kilogram for rice. I mean, that's a basic staple. Right. And they're running out of it, by the way, if you can find it.
$1.43 at Walmart.
And you need to pay in cash to afford this, which means the prices are doubled.
Yeah. Doubled. Yep. So,
and they continue to not let the aid trucks in, and then gaslight and say that they are letting aid trucks in, and that they don't know what you're talking about because aid trucks are flowing in. What do you mean?
they've not had water drinkable forever. You know, it's been like 97% undrinkable water for like
weeks,
a decade now.
Well, yeah.
Right.
Well, yes.
So, yeah, I know.
Again, it's been 100 days since the abduction of Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya. All right. And this was on April 6th. So that was today. Let this man go. But I meant to bring this last week. It was actually came out last Saturday. Reef, you shared this. Dr. Hussam's lawyer, he was denied legal representation for over 45 days, brutally beaten during interrogations, suffering broken ribs and severe injuries, and held in solitary for weeks. Israeli authorities had allegedly tortured him to extract confessions and fabricate a security case, and now he is going to be held for another 6 months.
He was done access for more than 45 days. After these 45 days ended, the prison administration started making, I missed that. I'll go back a bit and catch up. Started making excuses. Of course they did.
They said the earliest
available appointment.
Beginning of March.
Beginning of March. They also delayed the visit for some time.
Second visit
was
March 19th.
On the 19th. Yep.
That lasted 17 minutes. It was clear there was a decision or obstinacy from the prison authorities that they did not want us to sit with him for a longer period. However, during these 17 minutes, we still managed to discuss all the violations, his entire interrogation period, and all the torture he was subjected to. Unfortunately, what I understood from him is that when he was held at State Haman military camp, where he stayed for about 14 days, he underwent between 4 to 5 interrogations. During these interrogations, he was severely beaten by a group of soldiers who unfortunately assaulted him even while being transferred. Even on his way to interrogation, he was beaten. On his way to clinic, he was beaten. Unfortunately, they broke about 3 or 4 of his ribs in the chest area.
Jesus Christ.
He was punched hard in the eye, causing an injury. He was also placed in solitary for a period until he was transferred to Ophir prison. In Ophir prison, he stayed for 25 days in solitary in a cell measuring solitary, right, in 1.5 meters by 1 meter. Wow, that's like a 3 by 4.5. That's like a literal, like you could barely move.
It's a fucking box, right?
There too, he was subjected to severe beatings and psychological pressure. To the extent that his body became physically exhausted, he was physically drained to the point where the prison administration forced to bring in doctors to treat him. He underwent several interrogations inside military camps and prisons. These interrogations were conducted by the Army or intelligence services. They were extremely harsh on him during the interrogations. He was subjected to severe mistreatment. One of the main reasons for this mistreatment was that he openly challenged the system. He refused to evacuate Kamal Adwan Hospital. They wanted to make an example of him. They aimed to intimidate the rest of the detainees throughout and to send a message that anyone who dares challenge them or even thinks of defying them and refusing to obey their orders and those in the army, that is the fate that awaits them. They tried to turn his case into an ordinary security file to charge him with an indictment, and they were hoping to extract confessions from him, which is also very important to him, is the issue of medical staff, medical teams, the doctors, the wounded. He's always been and remains, this has always been the people and the patients, one of his top priorities.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he's not alone. He's not the only doctor detained in prisons. We have hundreds of medical professionals,
nurses, surgeons,
detained inside Israeli prisons and Israeli military camps. He's only one. They were taken from inside Gaza, from hospitals. Now we're going to get into just by the numbers, because I really like Steve Semler. And I believe this is a free article where he breaks down Israel's war on aid workers. All right. This was from the other day. Polygraph.substack, StephenSemler.com, Semler. He's, again, good analytics numbers guy, just looks at the raw numbers. All right. And what he said was that by the numbers, let's look at the war on workers, on aid workers. If this incident generates enough public backlash, Israel will claim without credible evidence that the aid workers were our militants. What a surprise. For now, its excuse is that the ambulances were advancing suspiciously toward IDF troops. And that the Guardian, per the Guardian, the movement of the ambulances had not been coordinated with the IDF in advance. Right. Okay. But the Israeli military stopped acknowledging notifications through the humanitarian notification system, the process by which aid workers alert warring parties of their intended movements so they don't get shot at during the ceasefire.
Yeah, who owns that? Peter Thiel?
Right. Israel's intent with this move was clear: deny Palestinians life-saving aid by making the risk of carrying out humanitarian operations too high, and it worked. Save the Children, for example, scaled back its operations in Gaza by 80% after Israel withdrew from the system. The Israeli military's systematic killing of aid workers serves the same objective. Per a former colleague of mine in the humanitarian sector, quote, the targeting of healthcare workers is deliberate. Israel wants to diminish the aid response capacity so organizations of their own accord stop working. See also making conditions so intolerable that Palestinians self-deport. This might sound familiar. There is also plenty of forensic evidence to support these comments, and the numbers on humanitarian worker deaths speak for themselves. He says, since October 23, I estimate that Israel has killed about twice as many aid workers, 426, as the rest of the world combined, according to my analysis of data from the Aid Worker Security Database, cross-referenced with media and other reports. During that stretch, Israel killed humanitarian workers in Gaza, the West Bank, Lebanon, and Yemen, and injured at least 3 aid workers in Syria, in addition to the 164 it wounded elsewhere from October 23 to April of this year. Share the following chart on social media and you'll likely get a comment along the lines of aid workers are terrorists, parroting an apartheid state's genocidal logic. And remember, we just read about what an apartheid state Israel is. One that turns international law and morality on its head is certainly a choice. One that the commentator had plenty of time to think about as they painstakingly mashed their sweaty, clunky, inbred fingers onto the keyboard to churn out that vile remark. Would have been easier for them to just keep quiet. And here are the numbers. 640 aid workers, 426 from Israel alone, 217 by the rest of the world, which is still gross.
Yeah.
Okay. The methodology is that, and you can read about it there. I'm not going to get into reading it, but bottom line is Israel has killed 426 aid workers in addition to the 208 journalists, in addition to blah, 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 in addition to the scholars, the teachers, the dentists, the everything else that they've murdered in addition. But specifically, aid workers. Literally, systematically attacking the healthcare system. Thus, concludes our Fuck Israel segment for the evening, thankfully. Sort of. I mean, of course, everything has the looming overshadow of Israel funding all of it. And we'll get to Zionist Bitcoin.
You motherfuckers.
We'll get to Zionist Bitcoin, Golden Monarch in a little while. Because I know Golden Monarch going, fucking Zionist Bitcoin. That's his thing. Well, before saying fuck Israel.
Acquisition is greed is eternal.
Yes, we know. The Ferengis. The Israelis, these Ferengis, which is which. Anyway, For saying shit like that, we get demonetized. That's why we ask you to please support the media you want to see and fund the media you want to see.
Do it.
With a Cash App at $Indie News Network if you're so inclined and you have the means and you find some bucks between the couch or you digitally find a couple dollars. ko-fi.com/Indie News Network. PayPal.me/Indie News Network. That does help. INNnewsletter.com is the way to stay in touch with the network on a daily basis. Hi, everybody. Wow, we got a good crowd. 32 people live here. We got people over on the Rumbles.
Hi, we're blooded.
Go start. All right. Yes, that's right. I got that right. You bet. I know you're screaming at your screen right now. I got you, bro. All right. Kill your egregores.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what's going on. I don't want to get into that because no, come on. We're all friends here.
It's okay.
We all love each other. It's
fine.
all good. Shadow Hob, good to see you over on the Kickers. Kick. All right. So kick.com/Indie News Network. We are growing over there. We're going to beat Kit to 1 million. Come on, help us beat Hardlens Media to 1 million and prove that if we were starting basically at the same time, we're going to grow together. We're going to do it together, side by side. All right. Oh, what? That shouldn't be there. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I had a couple more things for Israel. I knew I had something else.
What happens? Where does your memory go when you forget it?
I'm not looking at my documents, so my rundown's missing. Sana Saeed, we know her. We love her. She's fantastic. Support and follow her. This is also interesting. The Israeli military is one of Microsoft AI's biggest clients, with that relationship deepening during some of the worst Israeli bombardment of Gaza during this genocide. This is a Muslim Microsoft employee calling out the CEO of Microsoft AI, who is a British Syrian, not Muslim. Mustafa Soliman, may your name never be forgotten, and may the blood on your hands of Palestinians forever stain your skin. So Microsoft employee disrupts 50th anniversary and calls AI boss a war profiteer.
50,000 people have died, and Microsoft powers this genocide in our region.
Thank you for your protest, I hear you.
Your Syrian family know about this, Mustafa.
I hear your protest, thank you.
Yeah, slap those papers.
You are a war profiteer.
I hear you.
Stop using AI for genocide, Mustafa. Stop using AI for genocide in our region. You have blood on your hands. All of Microsoft has blood on its hands. How do you all celebrate when Microsoft is killing children? Shame on you all.
Thank you. I hear your protest, thank you. Okay.
I hear you.
I hear your protest, and I'm going to do absolutely nothing about it.
I
Thank
hear
you.
you.
Thank you. Fuck you.
Shame.
That belonged there.
Shame.
Shame. Shame.
Shame.
Okay. We're going to get to all the tariff and the crashing of the economy and everybody losing their fucking minds in a minute. Yeah. Nice job, lady. Absolutely. Yes, Cookies. I agree. She did a hell of a job. I wanted to bring that. That there are brave people working in these organizations standing up. Now, she's worked there for how long? And I don't know how silent she's been, but he walked into that meeting. She was invited to that meeting. They didn't think that she would be a problem to invite her to that meeting. She chose that moment to stand up, which I appreciate.
We hear you.
But at the same time,
we see you.
How long was there silence before that? Again, she's Muslim, and I can't really. I'm not trying to pass judgment. I'm not, but your protest doesn't increase my portfolio. That fuck that fuckwad. That's right. Yep.
We're sorry. We're sorry.
We're so sorry.
That's all you're gonna get. That's what you're gonna get.
Sorry.
That is that the coffee? Is that when the coffee company moves into South Park? That's one of my favorite episodes.
No, that's the BP episode.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah, we're sorry for ruining your environment, right?
We're sorry.
So
we're sorry.
I don't know if anybody in this crowd has any stocks, mutual funds, retirement funds, or planned on retiring anytime soon. Yeah. Trump's pretty. Trump didn't do so great this week, did he? Now he's still bragging. Amazingly enough, he played golf at Mar-a-Lago today, and he's doing just fine. And I'm going to explain why in a second, because he got his. Here are facts that you need to amplify, and I don't necessarily agree with all of these facts, but okay. Trump made cuts to Social Security. That is a fact. That is true. It cost the American taxpayer $1 billion to bomb Yemen in the last week, resulting in the massacre of children and innocent people. Also true. This one I'm not so sure is true, but Trump has doubled his net worth in the last 3 months, while Americans are poorer than they were before Trump took office. And of course, the headline is that the Dow plunged more than 2,000 points on Friday as the sell-off worsens, and the futures and the European market
just fell down to zero, and it's gonna be a fine, swell day.
And it's looking like the futures markets and Asia is opening to another 2, 3, 4% drop, and Europe is going to probably do the same. It's going to be another hellish Monday.
Now, do you remember when someone, a certain president on Twitter, said something like, if the Dow Jones plunges more than 2,000 points, you should fire the president out of cannon? You don't remember that?
Yeah, except they spelled Jones, Joans. Like a fucking moron.
I sent that to you, right?
Yes. The president's tariffs sent stocks tumbling for the second day in a row. However, yes.
Yay.
I want to contest one thing here, is that his net worth did not double in the last 3 months. However, it did double in the past year. And I brought this, how he doubled his net worth in a year. And it's all just on paper, of course. You know, that they did release the Forbes 2025 list. Okay. And his net worth, all right, according to this, why is this not letting me see the full article? Show full article. Stop.
You gotta click show for, you gotta click it. You gotta click the, click it.
I am.
You gotta continue.
Boo!
Now do the CAPTCHA. You gotta have the CAPTCHA.
Come on, man.
You know?
I had this before, but basically what it's saying is that his net worth has gone from 2.3 to 5.1 billion. And the way he's done that effectively is with his crypto and with his DJT stock. That it's not all the real world assets or the cash that he's actually holding that have increased by all that. It's the bullshit, fake on paper bullshit. All right. The $ Trump.
Yeah. Good time with your Bitcoin, your crypto, and everything else that you're playing with.
The Trump meme stock that's currently worth a couple of $1 billion, but will be worth nothing at some point. But right now on
Melania
paper,
bucks.
Right. All right. $5 billion it says he's worth. Fuck that guy.
Sorry, Baron bucks.
But I wanted to bring two other pieces about Trump, which was, first of all, this is an article from 6 months ago. November 20th.
Jeffrey Orange Peel from The New Era
wrote this article, and he says in here, this is a long article about President-elect Ponzi. Basically saying that this guy is a complete pump and dump fake across the board. It's no accident that the various candidates vying to be President-elect Trump's Treasury Secretary should be drawn from the same pool of asset management firms. To all intents and purposes, asset management firms now own America and quite a bit of the world. BlackRock alone has over $11 trillion in assets under management. Larry Fink has made clear he needs to acquire more. As U.S. national debt,
dickhead.
Yep. As U.S. national debt has grown markedly since the last Trump administration, so too have the asset holdings of the big private equity firms and asset managers. What a coincidence. Clearly, it's no coincidence, right?
Coincidink.
So this is the holdings of BlackRock. Okay, again, in 2009, $3 trillion, now $11.5 trillion of management. Ridiculous. The fact that they were already managing The fact that in 2006 they already had $1 trillion under management was probably something we should have been concerned about. And then after the financial crisis, they more than doubled in a year. Thank you, Obama. Thanks, Obama. The extent of growth of assets under ownership by Fink and his buddies comes down to a policy that was kicked off after the great financial crash of 2008, largely as a result of Fink's close relationship with President Obama's Treasury Secretary, Tim Geithner. BlackRock was chosen as what was the chosen one as far as economic recovery was concerned. And the net result of this, thank you. And the net result of this partnership between Fink and the government was an explosion in employment for former Fed executives in BlackRock and a vast increase in the firm's assets under management. It's suggested that it was Fink's idea that the Fed should go direct, investing directly into the corporate bond market. Handily, BlackRock and other asset managers now offer approved ETFs, all right, that the Fed can merrily buy. How convenient. As of 2020, BlackRock was running debt buying programs focused on mortgage-backed securities, commercial real estate, corporate bonds, and treasury bonds. Diversify your bonds. This activity is spun as critical for revitalizing the U.S. economy, except it doesn't. However, it depends, of course, on the Treasury creating money out of thin air, which we know it does. Hence the term debt buying. The Treasury and Fed combo are essentially buying up trillions of dollars of assets with newly printed money. And I just heard Steve Grumbine's head explode. Because he knows it's all printed money. It's all printed money. You'll recall that one of Keir Starmer's earliest visitors to Downing Street after his landslide election addiction was Larry Fink with Bill Gates in tow. Fink and the other asset management firms simply can't acquire assets fast enough. They're literally running out of stuff to buy. Hence, they need to extend into new markets, buying up farmland in the UK or local government pension schemes. And Fink has also stated his ambition to acquire competitors with better positions in alternative assets, such as crypto and commodities and futures. So the other
frozen orange juice.
But it's his fellow parasitic asset managers aren't even safe. Man, no honor among thieves.
Yeah.
London is a lucrative market for these. Hence, the new Trump administration's intent to keep the momentum going for the money printing and buying Ponzi scheme started under Obama, continued under Trump and Biden, and now with bells on under Trump 2.0, money printing machine go brrr. So, for example, and this is the paragraph I brought this for, Howard Lutnick, you might have heard of him, was for a while in the running for Treasury Secretary. Although he's now been given the commerce role, responsible for hiking up America's external tariffs, apparently. Again, this is November 20th. Howard Lutnick was responsible for hiking up America's external tariffs. Can I read that again? Because I want you to be fucking clear as hell. This is not Trump's tariffs. Howard Lutnick, our Commerce Secretary, 6 months ago, foreshadowed that he will be responsible for hiking up America's external tariffs. Was there anything in the news this week about tariffs? I don't remember.
So.
Lutnick
is... Watch that Bueller movie?
Lutnick,
there's something about that in there.
The Holly Smoot tariff. Is it? Yeah, I can't. Fry. He actually played that for me this week. It's funny. Lutnick, again, Howard Lutnick, is the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald, one of those alternative asset managers. He was also the guy who, in 2015, threw a fundraiser bash at his home for Hillary Clinton. The only problem...
Go to the polls.
The only problem being that his next door neighbor to none other than Jeffrey Epstein. Awkward.
Nice. Where, you fly on Diddy's plane too?
And now he's in the Trump administration.
You know?
Although this incident is a wonderful exemplar as to the extent of asset managers' loyalty to this particular get-rich-quick scheme of stealing money from public coffers, whatever brand of politician occupies the White House, you can be pretty sure the fund managers will give their loyalty, provided the perpetual motion machine of money printing and funding keeps cranking and going. Yep.
Yeah.
The least favorite.
In 1930, the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, in an effort to alleviate the effects of the Anyone? The Great Depression, passed the anyone? The tariff bill, the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act, which raised or lowered? Raised tariffs in an effort to collect more revenue for the federal government. Did it work? Anyone know the effects?
It did not work.
It did not work, and the United States sank deeper into the Great Depression.
Yeah.
Fuck, dude, that's Ben Stein. For those of you who remember, they literally made him into like a celebrity. They put him on fucking TV like he was a smart guy that actually knew anything. He's literally an actor. Oh yeah, he was a fucking economist or whatever. He's an actor. All right. Then they actually literally had him be a smug, arrogant TV show fucking guy, win Ben Stein's money. He was like a trivia guy. Douchey.
Nice.
Fry.
Don't be rude.
Oh, Cookies, leave BW alone. He knows not what he says. Just wait and see after they pay $50 for a pound of Z-Bugs. Okay? So, Fink was the target, potentially, for Treasury Secretary. All right? Apollo Management co-founder Mark Rowan, and I believe he ended up with the job. And so the revolving door trundles. So I wanted to bring that Lutnick, again, everybody's freaking out about tariffs. It is Howard Lutnick is the reason why we have the tariffs that we do. He has been advocating for tariffs for a long time. And yes, tariffs, Trump did tariffs during his first term with China, but not universal across the board tariffs on the biggest bullshit equation to like he literally pulled that equation out of his ass. People were like, this is the most ridiculous thing ever. There are some goods now 67% tariff from Vietnam. What? It's insane. It's insane. Now I wanted to bring this one. This is actually kind of a ray of sunshine for the anti-imperialist crowd because it just shows, and for BRICS also, that a lot of the moves that Trump is making can be perceived as weak. And I don't see a lot of MAGA really understanding or accepting this kind of a point. I really like George Hussam, George's newsletter. So weak. To walk. He have to walk Jimmy Oliver. So, hiya, Uncle Roger. Yep. Uncle Roger is very upset. He's very upset with Donald Trump. U.S. President Trump is in uncharted waters, territory he's unaccustomed to, and that's losing. The self-proclaimed master negotiator, slick super salesman, the author of The Art of the Deal, not really, of course we know that's Tony, whatever his name is drowning in frustration and failure. Trump is awakening from delusion to the harsh rudeness of reality. Whatever influence he thought he had negotiating a ceasefire deal on U.S. terms is being exposed. He's playing with no cards while Putin holds them all. Let me make this bigger.
Does he look like a bitch?
Well, but and Trump's desperation to arrest a ship veering off course is showing. Okay, in a display of frustration and confusion that exposes the U.S.'s eroding global influence, Trump told MSNBC News that he's pissed off with Putin and is threatening to impose secondary tariffs on Russian oil if a ceasefire in Ukraine isn't reached soon. Trump's comments made during a phone interview on Sunday last week reveal more than just irritation. They expose a geopolitical truth in the U.S. that the U.S. has refused to acknowledge. The proxy war, it started in Ukraine more than a decade ago through CIA-backed coups, the breaking of the Minsk Accords, and NATO's eastward creep, has failed. Russia's 2022 invasion, long portrayed as unprovoked, was the culmination of years of escalation and attempts to encircle and antagonize Russia. It's Putin, not Washington, who holds the upper hand. And Trump's rhetoric smells of desperation from a leader grasping at straws in a global chess match he can no longer control. I was pissed off about it, he says, referring to recent comments by Putin suggesting alternative leadership in Ukraine and sidelining President Zelensky. Quote, if a deal isn't made, and I think it was Russia's fault, and if I think it was Russia's fault, I'm going to put secondary sanctions on Russia, he said, threatening to slap tariffs on all oil coming out of Russia. Except, they've been under sanctions for 3 years. Trump's demeanor is not that of a confident, commanding leader of a superpower. It's the petulant outburst of a president who knows Washington has lost leverage over a war it instigated. His threat to strong-arm countries like India and China, key buyers of Russian oil, by slapping them with 25 to 50% tariffs if they continue to do business with Moscow, is not only toothless, but pure geopolitical fantasy.
Never failed.
Never failed, brother. India and China
Never pay.
India and China have long prioritized strategic autonomy, and Washington's fading ability to coerce global partners only underscores how far the U.S. has fallen from its unipolar perch. Trump's veiled admission that it might not be Russia's fault if a peace deal fails shows the cracks of America's narrative. For years, the U.S. pushed the idea that Russia's invasion was unprovoked and unjustified. No, that was the Biden administration. Well, I guess it was the U.S., the official narrative of the State Department. Of course, we were saying opposite long time ago. But behind closed doors, even Trump acknowledges the complex reality mainstream media avoids. Ukraine was used as a battering ram in Washington's larger mission to break Russia apart, depose Putin, and plunder its resources. It still is. The U.S. hasn't just failed, it has backfired spectacularly. Russia's economy has withstood years of sanctions, its energy trade continues unabated, and its political leadership remains firmly in place. Meanwhile, back at the Hall of Doom, at the Legion of Doom, American influence on global oil markets is eroding.
While at the Legion
of Doom.
Thank you. And attempts to weaponize trade like Trump's latest tariff threats and now his literal tariff implementations now come across as bluster from a weakened empire that literally destroyed the global marketplace. Good job, guys.
Yeah.
The White House last week touted a 30-day Black Sea truce as progress in Trump's push for a broader ceasefire. Ukraine agreed to halt strikes on energy infrastructure, while Russia's cooperation was conditioned on the removal of sanctions on its agricultural bank and related institutions. Russia is dictating terms, not the U.S. Again, what happened here?
Don't take a dump, son, without a plan.
Well, their plan here was to make the Ukrainians stop attacking their energy infrastructure and to have sanctions lifted on agricultural bank and related institutions. Nothing happened for Ukraine here, by the way. If Trump follows through on his oil sanctions, the global economy could feel the shock. Trump's threat should see prices reacting more strongly considering the volumes at risk, but so far there are no supply disruptions, just threats. Again, never listen to what he says, but you better pay attention to what he does. And when he unveiled those tariffs, that's when people reacted. That's when the markets dropped 2,000 points. That's when 8% of the market literally wiped out overnight. The U.S. no longer has the capacity to impose real economic damage without harming itself and its allies. The bigger concern, however, lies in what Trump appears to be angling for next: Iran. In the same NBC interview, Trump said he's considering secondary tariffs against Tehran and warned that if Iran doesn't agree to a new nuclear accord within 2 months, it'll face U.S. bombing, which Trump's going to want to dictate all of the terms of that quote-unquote accord. It's basically, accept this with a gun to your head or else. A letter reportedly sent to the Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei gave the ultimatum, but Iran has rejected any direct talks with the Trump administration. Right?
Yep. They're going, try me, bitch.
Trump's tough talking reveals a dangerous new gamble that he hopes to use a rushed ceasefire with Russia as a launchpad for military action against Iran, mistakenly believing that securing peace in Ukraine will neutralize Moscow's willingness to defend Tehran. He may not be mistaken. If that's Trump's bet, it reflects a fundamental misreading of both Putin and Russia. And I disagree there because there's also an Israeli influence with which Putin has always seemed to manage to get along. So I don't know if that's really a misreading. The idea that Russia would sit idly by while its strategic partner is bombed by the U.S. displays a level of ignorance unbecoming of any statesman. I'm going to stop right there for a second.
Maybe.
Do you see what the fuck is happening in Syria?
Mm-hmm.
How do you say that after what you just saw them watch HTS do and stand by and watch them watch HTS do?
Correct.
Okay. Russia has invested heavily, militarily, economically, and diplomatically in its relationship with Iran, as it did in Syria. Any strike by the U.S. on Iranian soil would almost certainly provoke a coordinated response from Moscow. Also, hard disagree there. Hard disagree.
It didn't do that in Syria.
They didn't do that in Syria.
Pretty much because they still have this threat in Ukraine that they're throwing money into. So they cut their losses, so to speak. Their losses being a giant weakness that Trump is now going to try and exploit, looks like.
More broadly, again, so I love George, and I agree with a lot of what he says here. I just disagree with that point. More broadly, Trump's foreign policy reveals a pattern of invented tactics and improvised threats, like the new concept of secondary tariffs aimed at forcing submission rather than fostering diplomacy. No, he doesn't do diplomacy. He does bully mafia tactics. That's what he does. Nice country there. Shame if something happened to it. Just last week, Trump threatened to impose similar tariffs on countries that buy oil from Venezuela, another nation already suffocating under U.S. sanctions. He claimed Venezuela was sending tens of thousands of criminals to the U.S., offering no credible evidence, which he's been doing for weeks, and sending them to El Salvador to his buddy Bukele, who's probably paying him Bitcoin. This isn't strength. It's the tantrum of a man who doesn't understand the board he's playing on. Because he's not the player. He's a pawn. And the person that's manipulating him does understand the board he's playing on. Putin, by contrast, has demonstrated strategic patience, resilience, and a deeper understanding of global power dynamics. Trump's frustrations, the angry outbursts, and scattershot threats only reinforce the growing sense that he's negotiating from a position of weakness while Russia sets the tempo for whatever comes next. If Trump genuinely believes he can coerce Russia into peace while simultaneously threatening Iran, he's not just miscalculating, he's endangering global stability. And I agree with him there. Except that...
Boy, that
escalated quickly. It sure did. I don't think he's miscalculating, but I do think he's endangering global stability. Until he accepts that he holds no cards of value, the U.S. will continue to flail in a geopolitical game it no longer dominates. GeorgeHussam.substack.com. Give him a follow. Give him a subscription. I'm a fan. It's free. You can also pay. You support him with a financially, but lover of Aussie rules and Brazilian jiu-jitsu enthusiast. Okay, journalist, fierce defender of the underdog. Good dude. Connected with him about a year ago on Substack, and I really like reading his stuff. So that's a different perspective on what's happening with Trump and tariffs and why he's doing this. Is this from a position of strength? Doesn't seem like it. I think that the response from the other countries in putting reciprocal tariffs in place is certainly going to isolate us further and accelerate the global reset that he was brought in to usher. So he's doing what he was brought in to do, sadly. Now what he wasn't brought in to do was tweet out war crimes, but he's doing that anyway.
Stop! You violated the law.
25 seconds from the dumbass president that we have, and I'm not going to play the video. These Houthis gathered for instructions on an attack. No, they didn't. They were celebrating. It was the end of a holiday. Oops, there will be no attack by these Houthis. They will never sink our ships again. These people were unarmed.
Until they do.
These people were unarmed, and they didn't fire shit at U.S. ships. Caitlin Johnstone, wait, so Trump's Yemen snuff film not only resembles the WikiLeaks collateral murder video, but it was also released on its 15-year anniversary.
Oh.
Oh, my God.
Winky dinks.
Misty says, amazing.
We're fucked.
Okay. And because we have to have a little bit more levity tonight, we're going to bring Normal Island News, Indie Media Award honoree, and Caitlin is too, but Normal Island News. President Trump brags about his war crime and shares the evidence. We're proud of our war crimes now. Again, she's my favorite parody writer. Remember when people got arrested and jailed for leaking footage of U.S. war crimes? Well, these days, the president publishes footage of his war crimes and brags about them. It's like WikiLeaks is running the White House's PR team. Israel's genocide means we no longer bother to hide incriminating evidence from the ICC. We're loud and proud about our acts of evil. Isn't life better when supervillains are free to be their authentic selves? The anti-war president finally came out as a supervillain when he published footage on social media of a tribe gathering in a circle for something called Eid al-Fitr. The tribe was blown up by a U.S. bomb, and many of the victims were, of course, women and children. This was Trump's biggest military success since the day he bombed an apartment building because the girlfriend of a missile scientist lived there. In his social media post, Trump bragged that there will be no attack by these Houthis and insisted that they will never sink our ships again, accidentally admitting Ansar Allah had indeed been sinking U.S. naval vessels. Last time this happened in the region, the USS Liberty was bombed by, fuck, I'm not supposed to talk about that. Let's get back to the most recent bombing.
Israel.
The one during Eid al-Fitr that we're bragging about. Now, I have no idea what Eid al-Fitr means, but as a massive racist, I'm going to assume it's some pre-terrorism ritual. I mean, if that logic is good enough for me to be president of the United States, it's good enough for me. Sure. Presumably, Yemenis stand conveniently in a circle when they're planning to sink a U.S. warship to make it as easy as possible for the U.S. to kill them. The desert tribe was sophisticated enough to sink vessels that cost more than its country's GDP and stupid enough to make itself an unmissable target. Fortunately, everyone in Yemen was doing the same pre-terrorism ritual, meaning Trump could have randomly targeted any gathering and made the same claim. Going forward, this makes his job easy because the war is going to involve lots of massacres to keep the AIPAC donations rolling in. Trump once criticized Biden for bombing Yemen and said we should talk to Ansar Allah instead, but thankfully, he's reformed now because he already sent his agent.
He done got his mind right.
No, he had his assets in the region already, but we all know who they are, but yeah, we won't say. The born-again warmonger is following in the footsteps of previous U.S. presidents who bombed the terrorist gatherings known as weddings and funerals. I understand Trump's next target is a kid's birthday party. Maybe the pony rides.
Probably.
And pin the tail on the donkey.
Yeah.
Disappointingly, bombing civilians during Eid al-Fitr has done nothing to stop Ansar Allah blockading the Red Sea. U.S. warships are in the region with the noble aim of keeping a genocide going, which means Ansar Allah is doing terrorism and the U.S. is respecting international law. I can't even say that with a straight face. The U.S. helped out Saudi Arabia bomb Yemen for 7 years and somehow failed to stop Ansar Allah. But I'm confident things will be different this time. If you were concerned that Trump's going to lose a war against Yemen and start a war against Iran that he's also going to lose, just consider that he started a trade war with the world that he's also going to lose.
Penguins.
Sorry, I never thought that one through, but remember, he also started a trade war with penguins that he is also going to lose. So much winning. Bollocks. I'm not very good at this, am I? Just please stick your head up your arse. I'm sorry, ass. And tell yourself these wars are going to make America great again somehow. The alternative means facing reality, and that's far too scary. I love that woman. Protect her at all costs. What? We got a spoopy sighting?
No, no, it's just spookies as in it's scary. You know?
If a foreigner can run our pitiful country, then please, Laura, move here and do the same. My senators both voted against the Sanders bill to stop arming Israel, as did most of them, and his is just performative anyway. I left voicemails for each of them, calling them every vile name in my extensive vocabulary of vile names, like writing a letter to Santa Claus. One of them has the unfortunate name of Alyssa Slotkin. She will forever be known as Slutkin, as in slut, whore, cocksucker for Israel. P.S. Laura, hope the little one is doing well. Her son had a seizure and he's going to require constant care, and that's a whole other story. Read the story about her son. It's sad to read, but I feel for her. Again, Laura K, Normal Island News. It's not really Laura K. She's a parody of Laura Kusenberg, who's a BBC pundit who is a total shit lib and member of the Conservative Party. So, anyway, I do have
cocksucker motherfucker and tits.
Like I said, if I was going to do the Michael Saylor story, we're going to run a little long. I kind of do what I let it. I teased with it, and I kind of feel bad if I didn't run with it. And I think it's a good article, and I think it's important for a lot of people. It, in layman's terms, explains why this is a Ponzi and why what Saylor specifically is doing is a Ponzi, and why what he is doing in pumping up Bitcoin and buying Bitcoin and setting the price even higher also reflects a Ponzi. So I got this article that showed up in my inbox yesterday morning from a Substack called Based Opinions. I never really heard of it. They posted this link.
Based on what?
They posted this link underneath Michelle de Cryptodamus's Substack chat, and I started reading it, and the more I read it, I'm just like, oh, this is good. This is very good. Inside MicroStrategy's Bitcoin pyramid. Well, MicroStrategy is Michael Saylor's publicly traded software company. So what this does is this explains how the Bitcoin Emperor's new clothes made Saylor rich, while investors will end up paying the price. So he's got this broken down by chapters. It's very much BitConnect. We all have that friend who won't stop preaching the gospel of Michael Saylor and his Bitcoin revolution. The one with the laser eyes who keeps insisting that MicroStrategy's strategy is genius while quoting cosmic Bitcoin prophecies over brunch. Well, this article is your antidote, a mathematical breakdown of MicroStrategy's elaborate financial engineering, who's actually profiting, and why the numbers simply don't add up. It ain't about whether Bitcoin has value. It's about whether borrowing $12 billion at increasing interest rates to buy Bitcoin at high rates, while the CEO cashes out $600 million, is a visionary strategy or a sophisticated pyramid scheme. They might dismiss this as FUD without addressing the math. Okay, but at least you tried before they called you a no-coiner at the next family gathering. That's their little slight for people that don't believe in Bitcoin. You're a no-coiner. You'll be poor. Now let's explore the billion-dollar Bitcoin pyramid hiding in plain sight. Somebody used Ghibli Studio to imagine this. Here is Michael, the prophet of HODL, which is his Bitcoin evangelism. Bitcoin is hope. The rest is noise. You do not sell the ocean for a bucket of water. Bitcoin is a swarm of cyber hornets serving the goddess of wisdom. If these sound like the cryptic... Yes. If these sound like the cryptic utterances of a spiritual leader rather than a tech CEO, you're catching on to the Michael Saylor experience. Once an unremarkable business...
The yoke of the devil has been destroyed!
Right? Once an unremarkable business software executive, Saylor has transformed himself into crypto's most mesmerizing prophet. Max Kaiser would hate that you said that. A man who speaks of Bitcoin not as an investment, but as a moral imperative, a technological salvation, and possibly a new religion. Scientology.
The light of America's promise will always burn bright.
Well, it reminds me a lot of Scientology in a way, as far as shaping a new religion, because they're going to end up having so much in assets that to pay taxes on their holdings, they're going to fight to be declared a religion, so it's all tax-free.
Religion.
His Twitter feed reads like a fusion of investment advice, cosmic philosophy, and religious prophecy. Bullshit. American, manufactured bullshit.
American bullshit.
His devoted followers hang on every word.
American bullshit.
Treating each Bitcoin dip as a buying opportunity. Buy the dip. And each criticism is heresy. Through perfectly choreographed media appearances and conference speeches, Saylor has crafted a persona as Bitcoin's corporate messiah, the visionary who saw what others missed.
Our Father who art in heaven, and to the republic for which it stands.
Hallowed be thy name. Until thy kingdom come, thy will be done. His core message is simple.
And crown thy good into temptation.
But deliver us not into eternity from evil, right?
Something like that.
Right. His message is simple and compelling. HODL forever. Never sell. HODL means hold on for dear life. Never sell. Bitcoin is going to millions. Anyone who doesn't see this is simply lacking vision or the ability to continue funding that vision. But beneath the spiritual certainty lies a very earthy financial engineering project, one that would make the architects of history's greatest pyramid schemes blush with admiration. Bernie Madoff is very jealous. The MicroStrategy pyramid. Here we go. A story of financial magic. Let me explain why MicroStrategy is running what amounts to a sophisticated pyramid scheme. Imagine you create a club where members pay $100 to join. You use that money to buy a collectible asset, baseball cards, a Mickey Mantle baseball card. Then you convince new people to join your club for $150 because you now own this great asset. You use their money to buy more of the asset. As more people join at higher prices, early members of the club membership become more valuable. They see their membership more valuable. The cycle continues with new members always paying more than earlier ones, creating the illusion that the club itself is generating value when it's actually just recruiting new members at higher prices. This is precisely...
Hail as old as time.
This is precisely how MicroStrategy operates, just with added financial complexity to mask the structure. So this is about buying convertible debt and the different layers during and at which they did. Okay, so what it means is basically he was buying a bunch at $15,000 to $20,000. All right, those people benefit directly as Bitcoin's price rises. Then during layer 2, after the initial COVID era and people are going back to work, new investors buy $3.5 billion in bonds at almost no interest. as Bitcoin climbs up to 60,000. So they're happy. These funds purchase more Bitcoin, driving its price higher and inflating the value of these holdings here because they're buying it here too at higher prices. Crazy. Right. Then you've got the third layer where latecomers fund $7.5 billion in debt at higher interest rates, with Bitcoin now at 100,000 plus. Their capital sustains the scheme by covering prior debt obligations and buying more Bitcoin, which is going to further enrich these two layers, right? So now, again, now that you're 100,000, people that were buying at 15 and 20, they're up 80,000 already. Times $650 million. All right, so you've got massive scale of profitability here to play with. But people are also withdrawing. Not everybody is holding for dear life. The magic ingredient that makes this reverse pyramid work is the premium. MicroStrategy stock trades at a 250% premium to its own Bitcoin holdings net asset value. That makes no fucking sense. The company is worth more than the company is worth 200 and more than double what it currently holds. Why?
It don't make no motherfucking sense.
No, it doesn't. This allows the company to issue new shares or debt at inflated prices, use proceeds to buy more Bitcoin, and create a feedback loop where early investors' gains depend on latecomers accepting higher valuations. So they're all going to have to pay $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 to keep all these other people satisfied because now they're paying debt on the $15,000 Bitcoin. That debt is now being serviced. For this structure to remain solvent, MicroStrategy must continuously raise larger amounts of money from new investors to service existing debt obligations every year. The debt maturity schedule.
Rule 1, right?
Well, what's rule 1? Well,
once you have their money, you never give it back.
Yes, I know. Thank you, Rob. The debt maturity schedule is brutal. $650 million due in 2025, $3.25 billion due in 2 years, and $8.21 billion due by 2030. Okay, so let's math the math. That's almost $1.75 billion every year just in maturing debt, plus $205 million in annual operational losses from their failing software business. Now remember, MicroStrategy actually positions itself as a software company, not as a Bitcoin buyer. This means that MicroStrategy needs approximately $1.95 billion in fresh capital every year just to stay afloat between now and 2030. You don't think that's ever going to hit the wall? They're never not going to be, they're just perpetually going to be able to raise $2 billion a year? If they can't raise here's what happens. If they can't raise new money, Bitcoin would need to appreciate at mathematically impossible rates to cover these obligations. It would need to grow 10% annually just to service 2025's debt, 25% annually to service the 2027's debt, and 35% plus annually for all obligations to be settled through 2030. For 6 years. 35% a year for 6 years. For perspective, a sustained 35% annual growth would require Bitcoin to reach a $9.3 trillion market cap by 2030, which is about 9% of all global wealth. No asset in history has ever achieved such growth at that scale. That's like expecting your Bitcoin faucet rewards to buy you a Lambo. Theoretically possible, practically delusional. And even if this happens, early debt is financed with new investors, and this means that new debt will exponentially need to reach even harder targets by 2031 and 2032, and so on, and so forth. Holy shit. This guy is building a Bernie Madoff-style pyramid Ponzi where he's going to have so much debt that there's no way he could possibly pay it off. Whenever challenged about the pyramid-like structure, Saylor often invokes it's just like real estate refinancing defense, but that's like comparing SafeMoon to the US dollar. Fundamentally different. Real estate generates income through rent to service debt. Bitcoin produces no yield for the holding other than growth. Without cash flow, MicroStrategy's debt repayments depend entirely on new investors, people buying new MicroStrategy stock, or Bitcoin's speculative growth, a hallmark of pyramid dynamics. Nice try, Michael, but number go up isn't the same as rental income go in bank account. Now, here's the other problem. Follow the money, and you'll find that Michael Saylor is not really hodling. If you follow the money, while preaching hodl forever with religious fervor, his personal financial actions tell a very different story, one of systematic wealth extraction that would make the shadiest exchange operators jealous. Now, a year ago, we covered an article by a guy who self-immolated, allegedly. I don't know if he did or he didn't. But what he talked about was this. The fact that they claimed that all this money was going into the market, but it was immediately being extracted. They were immediately taking that money out of Bitcoin and putting it back into the stock market or into the bond market or into Swiss bank accounts or Cayman Islands bank accounts. It was not staying there. So let's follow the actual money trail with precision. His stock option bonanza. Since initiating the Bitcoin strategy, his compensation package, how convenient, has increased by over 400%. In 2022 alone, he received stock options valued at $94 million, far more than the typical CEO of a company with declining $500 million in annual revenue and losing $200 million a year. His total granted options since 2020 amount to approximately 1.2 million shares, and the exercise price on those options average around $300 to $400 a share, while the stock is traded above 1,000 for much of this year and last year. So what that means, again,
so he's just raking in money,
and he can cash out and
liquid
triple anything that he cashes out. Now, there's only certain periods he's allowed to cash out when he exercises those. But here's the extraction system. In Q1 of last year, he exercised 500,000 options worth $400 million. He immediately sold most of those, or 2/3 of them, for $216 million in cash. He then followed with the sale of another 370,000 shares of MicroStrategy for another $372 million. And guess what he did with all that money? He bought more Bitcoin with his personal money.
Gotcha.
But his
he could have bought like what, 8 golden Toyota Corollas?
But he also liquidates 5,000 shares of MicroStrategy daily, regardless of price. Why would he do that? Total cash.
You gotta get an income?
Well, no, it's so that he can buy more Bitcoin.
His income?
No, it's so he can buy more Bitcoin. He needs to break off the money to fund the Ponzi. He's breaking it off from the Ponzi to fund the Ponzi. While selling these shares, he also carefully retained his 19.9 million Class B shares, which is almost 10% ownership. These voting shares, super voting shares, give him 10 votes per share compared to 1 vote for the Class A shares that are on the market, which ensures that he maintains approximately 68% of voting control. He can never be voted out of his position. He cashes out hundreds of millions while maintaining ironclad control of the company. So in a particularly clever maneuver, he claims to use some stock sale proceeds to purchase Bitcoin personally, creating a self-reinforcing cycle where MicroStrategy buys Bitcoin with borrowed money, Bitcoin price rises, Saylor sells MicroStrategy shares at premium prices, then uses proceeds to buy personal Bitcoin, which helps support the price, justifying more corporate purchases by MicroStrategy. The volatility profit machine. So behind the scenes, Wall Street's sophisticated volatility traders don't care if Bitcoin goes up or down because they profit from its movement in either direction through delta hedging.
Okay.
They buy MicroStrategy convertible bonds, often at zero interest. Then they simultaneously short sell it to create a neutral position.
MicroStrategy.
As prices swing up and down, they adjust their hedges, capturing profits from volatility. These sons of bitches are profiting off these guys losing money. That's why they don't care. With Bitcoin's 10 to 15% daily price swings, which happened 27 times in 2023 alone, these traders generate 20 to 30% annual returns, even if Bitcoin goes down. Every time.
Riddle me this, Batman. What would happen if an entire group of people decided to short sell that exact company? You know?
Good question.
Like pull a GameStop on them.
GameStop? But then they would just freeze the market from being able to do that. Every time Saylor tweets that Bitcoin is going to infinity, these volatility traders pop champagne bottles, whether it pumps or dumps, doesn't matter to them. It's the Wall Street equivalent of, I'm in it for the tech, while secretly trading the volatility. So should every company abandon products for Bitcoin? I think so, but if MicroStrategy's strategy is so brilliant, why isn't every company doing this? Should Apple stop making iPhones and just convert its cash to Bitcoin? Should Coca-Cola's abandon soda production?
Already doing that.
I don't think so, no. They're still making iPhones. Should Coke abandon soda production and become a Bitcoin holding company? The absurdity becomes clear when you look at MicroStrategy's actual business performance since adopting this strategy. Their software division generated less than $500 million in revenue in 2023, while losing over $205 million. That's a 40-cent loss on every dollar of revenue. But of course, that's now being used as a front, effectively. They don't care if that loses money if they're making a shitload with Bitcoin on the other side, right? But here's the other thing. R&D investment decreased by 14%. Software development staff reduced by nearly 20%. Product update frequency also fell by over 35%. So they're not really updating and making new software. Their market share in business intelligence dropped almost in half. So as one former employee bluntly noted in a Glassdoor review, we're not a software company anymore. We're a Bitcoin holding company with a software hobby that loses money. The software business serves primarily as a regulatory camouflage, allowing MicroStrategy to avoid classification as an investment company, which would subject it to stricter oversight and constraints. What's really happening is that MicroStrategy is using its status as a public company to create what amounts to an unregulated, leveraged Bitcoin ETF. By technically remaining a software company, it sidesteps investment company regulations while offering investors Bitcoin exposure in tax-advantaged accounts like IRAs. Interesting.
Irish Republican armies?
Individual retirement accounts. So here's the mathematical certainty of collapse. The mathematical certainty of MicroStrategy's eventual unraveling stems from several converging factors beyond the massive debt obligations we've already discussed, which would crash it on its own. So like he says, first, remember that MicroStrategy needs about almost $2 billion a year in fresh capital each year to service debt and cover operational losses. Since Bitcoin holdings don't produce yield per se, new investors are the only possible funding source, which is a classic pyramid scheme dependency. They've got to get new funders. Second, as interest rates rise, the company's ability to issue near zero interest debt diminishes. Recent offerings carry interest rates of 2.5% to almost 6.125%, which is a significant increase from the earlier ones where they offered almost no interest on their bonds. Each 1% increase in their blended interest rate adds another $121 million in annual expenses on top of their $12.1 billion debt load. They just keep heaping costs on top. Now, third, the liquidity problem is severe. They're running out of money. With Bitcoin's true daily liquidity estimated at 10 to 15 billion, MicroStrategy's $44 billion holdings can't be liquidated without crashing the market. Because if you all of a sudden put $44 billion worth of Bitcoin out there, what do you think that's going to do to Bitcoin?
Yeah.
A forced sale of just 20% could trigger a market-wide cascade. It'd be like trying to cash out your life savings in an exchange that just tweeted funds or SAFU or snafu.
SAFU?
SAFU. Finally, if investors decide MicroStrategy's premium over Bitcoin net asset value is no longer justified, the stock could immediately drop in half and prevent further capital raising, which is the death knell for any pyramid structure. So this thing's going to collapse, and it's going to collapse hard. This guy's going to end up in jail or dead. Not from me. They will Epstein his ass. They'll arrest him, and then you'll see him dead in prison, potentially. He will disappear onto an island, and you'll never see him again. Or he will end up accidented. That's my prediction.
What am I gonna do?
As this elaborate financial structure inevitably unravels, here's who wins and loses. Michael Saylor's going to win. He's already cashed out over $500 million while maintaining control of the company. The early institutional investors who got in at the bottom are going to win. The convertible bondholders with their volatility extraction strategy, who make 20 to 30% regardless of whether Bitcoin goes up or down, they're going to win. The financial institutions collecting fees on each new debt issuance, they're definitely going to win. The short sellers who recognize the mathematical certainty of failure, they're going to win, but they're going to have to pay big interest while the thing runs down. And then, of course, media platforms like the Bitcoin conference that benefit from Saylor's provocative appearances and statements, they're going to win for now. Who's going to lose? Well, retail investors who bought the Bitcoin visionary narrative late in the game. Late-stage debt investors facing likely default when the music stops. Employees of MicroStrategy whose company was sacrificed for a Bitcoin bet. Of course, the crypto ecosystem that will face contagion when the $46 billion Bitcoin position faces potential forced liquidation. And of course, the true Bitcoin believers whose legitimate arguments for the quote-unquote assets value get tarnished by association with pyramid-like schemes.
Forced liquidation sounds like something you don't want to go through.
Well, basically, when his company can no longer service its debts, they're going to have to sell off their what's remaining of their Bitcoin at high prices or whatever price. And the minute that all that Bitcoin hits the market, it's going to depress the price of Bitcoin, which means they're going to get cents on the dollar.
What Boba Fett would send, Han Solo off to, Jabba the Hutt. Yeah, send them to the forced liquidation tank.
If MicroStrategy's strategy resembles a sophisticated pyramid scheme, why is Saylor celebrated as a visionary rather than investigated as a potential fraudster? Why is he a regular on financial news networks, conference stages, and podcast circuits? The answer lies partly in the coalition of early influential backers who validated his pivot. In the pivotal quarter preceding MicroStrategy's Bitcoin gambit in 2020 during the COVID time, lockdown, institutional heavyweights like BlackRock, Renaissance, and Dimensional Fund Advisors quietly amplified their stakes. Simultaneously, Susquehanna International began scooping up $300 million in convertible notes, and crypto vanguards like Cathie Wood's ARK Invest, Galaxy Digital, Pantera Capital, and Citadel all boarded the ship. Even celebrity investors like Chamath Palthapaya, I don't know who that is, publicly endorsed the play.
Try again?
I don't know. I'm not going to try that again.
Patia?
Yeah, that too. God bless you. These early adopters, many with ties to financial media and institutional credibility, effectively became Saylor's reputational air cover and his evangelists. History provides another clue. During the dot-com bubble, Saylor was already the master of the financial media circuit. Holy shit, I didn't realize this.
Nice.
In March 2000, MicroStrategy announced a massive restatement of its earnings revealing what the SEC later called material misstatements in its financial reporting. The stock collapsed 62% in a single day, and Saylor's paper wealth dropped by $6 billion. The company ultimately settled accounting fraud charges for $11 million in 2000. $11 million. He was still worth billions at the time. Yet within years, Saylor has rehabilitated his image and was back to being quoted as a tech visionary. Today's Bitcoin strategy represents a second act that's proven even more financially rewarding. There's also the simple fact that financial bubbles and pyramid structures often persist far longer than rational analysis would predict. Keynes famously noted that markets can remain irrational longer than you can remain solvent. At the moment of writing, MicroStrategy holds less than 2% of Bitcoin's supply, and Michael Saylor personally holds around $1 billion in Bitcoin. That a single company and CEO controls such a significant portion of an asset supposedly designed for decentralization is a red flag that would make even the most determined Bitcoin maximalist pause their laserized Twitter routine. But for now, the music continues to play and MicroStrategy's financial dance goes on. But mathematics doesn't care about evangelism, media appearances, or visionary speeches. When this house of cards eventually collapses, remember that while ordinary investors were told to hodl through the storm, the captain had already extracted hundreds of millions in profits, all without having to wait for Bitcoin to reach the millions he so confidently predicts. There's a particularly revealing detail in this saga that deserves special attention. Before launching his Bitcoin pyramid scheme, Michael Saylor was not the tech titan many assume. His net worth hovered around $400 million, certainly wealthy, but a mere fraction of his post-Bitcoin pivot fortune of over $7.5 billion. In fact, his pre-Bitcoin wealth was even less than the approximately $600 million he's already cashed out from MicroStrategy stock sales alone. This context is crucial. The Bitcoin strategy has personally enriched him far more than his entire previous career building actual software. The ultimate irony? While broadcasting apocalyptic warnings about the imminent collapse of fiat currency and urging followers to convert all wealth to Bitcoin, Saylor himself has been methodically accumulating the very things he publicly dismisses: luxury real estate and US dollars. Yes, the same USD he dramatically predicts will default and become worthless. If you can square that circle, you're smarter than I. Because Michael Saylor is a fucking scumbag Ponzi schemer. I'm sorry to financially bother everybody and make your brains all mushy this late at night, but I thought it was important to break down just how big a Ponzi this is and how big this is going to crash the entire market. If you thought what happened Friday was bad, wait till MicroStrategy crashes. Because BlackRock's going to go with it. BlackRock's going to go with it. All these ETF funds. The entire crypto market's about to crash, and everybody that invested their real money in that crypto market is going with it. When? I don't know, but it's going to happen. Oh. Golden Monarch says $11 million is nothing. Yes, it was a joke of a fine. A joke of a fine. Even in 2000, it was considered large, but he still was worth billions. We, on the other hand, are not worth billions at INN. So therefore, we can really use your help if you're able to out of means. The ways to do that, of course, Michael Saylor will not get a piece of any of this. Cash App, $, Indie News Network, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, paypal.me/Indie News Network. And I know I'm running long. I actually scheduled votes for 12:30 because I knew I was going to run long. I did have the lightning round. Quick shit to get to. Friend of the show, Arturo Dominguez. When the Trump administration asked the IRS to locate 7 million non-citizens using tax records, they also admitted that non-citizens pay income taxes to the IRS. Even they know the truth. Nice. They lied as usual, and suckers fell for it. Burn!
Yeah.
Fucking great. Shout out Arturo. This is a long article that you've got to read. I didn't want to read it because it's depressing and long. Unsanitary practices persist at baby formula factory whose shutdown led to mass shortages, workers say. Now, I don't know if you remember, but about 2 years ago on this show, we covered a popular information article about Abbott Labs and Similac and how they were shutting down the factories and there was a shortage on Similac because there was unsanitary practices. Well, guess what? Yep, that's still happening. So read this. I also had Conspirator Norteño. No, it can't. The Farce Awakens. Okay, so back in 2016, 2017, there was a account called Rogue POTUS Staff. Okay, or Rogue POTUS.
Yes.
And they would basically, it was like a shitlib type of account that would, to me, it was like publishing Democratic Party hopium. Right? And already there's a new account that popped back up that has been caught publishing Democratic Party hopium on both Blue Cry and Twitter. And go check that out. Conspirator Norteño. I'll have this in the description afterwards. Also wanted to give a shout out to my brother Chris Legion Socialist. No, not anymore. Now he's No Labels Pod, the No Labels Pod. Go give him a follow. We did a one-on-one last week. We recorded it Thursday, published Saturday night. So go check that out.
Who are these people?
Right? Is that Vin Diesel?
No, sorry, Shafir.
Oh, okay. Same thing. Also was on AM Wake Up last Monday. Steve was traveling to Third Eye Carnival, which was this weekend. Shout out to everyone who attended Third Eye, including Fred Edward, who's in the crowd. It was a great time. Everyone, Sam Tripoli apparently killed it. Leonardo Joni. I saw some of the videos that Pavlos had taken in the AM Wake Up Telegram group. If you go to t.me/AM Wake Up /1, you can join that group and see some of the videos and pictures of people at Third Eye. But I joined Charles and I got to hang out with Charlie Robinson, which was really a blast for me. I like Macroaggressions. They're Indie Media Award honoree. And Corey Hughes, who's done extensive research into the JFK assassination. Check that one out. And then we are live, by the way, on IndieNewsNow.com. That is our new website, where it is a news aggregator, but it's also where INN is hosting live through our restream, and you can chat through the Discord. And some people are using Discord now to chat. But you can also check out the latest news. We have over 100 sources there that feed articles 24/7. There is information about all the members of INN, little bio on each of us, where to find us, as well as a little bit about the network and all the shows, podcasts. And just like you're able to, and I ask you to support independent media, there's a way to do that here by using Cash App or Amazon or credit card. This goes right to our Stripe, which pays minimal fees. So if you're able to do that for a name your own price on a one-time basis or even potentially a recurring one, you're welcome to do that here over at IndieNewsNow.com. INDIE newsnow.com. All right. All right. So that's pretty much what I had. So one more time, if you're able to, please support independent media. Cash App, $ Indie News Network, code-fee.com/Indie News Network, paypal.me/Indie News Network. INNnewsletter.com gets you a daily update of all the things happening at the network and a weekly update on Friday afternoon, plus podcasts, like the Chris Legion one that went out yesterday. All right, we're going to do votes. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you bearing with me through that MicroStrategy one. I know it was a little rough. It was a long article to read, but I think there's a lot of important context in there about what a Ponzi Bitcoin is, about this guy, Michael Saylor, who's been all over the news, all right, and why he's bad, why we should not be listening to him, why we should be telling other people not to listen to him, and why Bitcoin is surefire to crash. Because if you've got this guy by liquidating all of his other stuff to buy more of it, to pump up the price, to liquidate, to buy more of it, to pump up the price, eventually he won't be able to do that anymore. And the whole thing's going to come crashing down. And he's only buying 1% of it. And there's plenty of other people doing this too. What's the height for short height? What's the height limit for short sellers? Steve Gill, very funny. All right, let's get the boats.
What's Danny DeVito's height?
He's about 5'2". All right, we're gonna get the
shorter
boats.
than that.
I don't think so, but support independent media, kids. We need it more than ever. Love you all. See you, boats.
Yeah.
Mwah. Ciao, baby.
No, we just fucking lost the stream.
I think I liked it better being blind, when I couldn't read between the lines, and when I couldn't see the cracks in the structure that lay bare before me the whole time. I think I liked it better back when I suspended disbelief and swallowed pride. I thought I knew the difference in the red from the blue, but they both bleed us so dry. They both bleed us so dry. My favorite songs don't hit the same way. I get to the end of a 4-minute track and I'm only looking back thinking, what did they actually say? You can't keep giving us nothing and think we're bluffing about coming for your heads. Why play civil if you won't listen to 50,000 dead? And now we know our mission, we form a militia, make Congress a prison. No, I play civil when all these dead won't make you listen. What's more American than slaying your oppressors? What's more American than liberty or death first? God, I thought we were founded on abolishing the tyranny of those who would starve a village all to live empirically. And I regret that I have only one life to give for my cause now that I can see the cause so clearly. See, I want our leaders, regardless of party, to fear me.